The broom handle felt warm under Diana Morrison's palms as she swept the same patch of wooden floor for the third time that morning. Her eyes drawn against her Wilta, the tall figure leaning against the porch post outside her father's general store in Fort Worth, Texas. It was late September of 1878, and the heat still clung to the air like honey, making her dark hair stick to the back of her neck. Diana had turned 19 just 2 weeks prior, and in all those years of helping run Morrison's general store, she had never seen a man quite like Zachary Porter. He had first appeared 3 weeks ago, always at the same time each morning, always wearing that dark brown hat pulled low over his eyes, always watching but never buying a single thing. Her father, Thomas Morrison, had noticed too. He stood behind the counter now, sorting through a delivery of canned goods, his weathered hands moving with practiced efficiency. "That cowboy is out there again," he muttered, not looking up from his work. Diana pushed a strand of hair behind her ear and continued sweeping, the bristles making soft, scratching sounds against the floorboards. "Maybe he is just resting." For 3 weeks straight, at the exact same time every morning. Her father's voice carried skepticism but not hostility. Thomas Morrison was a fair man, having built his store from nothing after moving to Fort Worth in 1871. The town had grown considerably since then, with the railroad bringing new opportunities and new faces every month. Through the front window, Diana could see Zachary shift his weight from one leg to the other. He was tall, probably 6 feet or more, with broad shoulders that spoke of hard work and long days in the saddle. His clothes were dusty but well-maintained, and she had noticed the way he carried himself with a quiet confidence that made her heart beat faster whenever she allowed herself to look directly at him. "I will go ask if he needs anything," Diana said, setting the broom against the wall before her father could protest. The morning sun hit her face as she stepped onto the porch, and she had to squint to see Zachary clearly. Up close, she could make out more details. He looked to be in his early 20s, with sun-bronzed skin and a strong jawline shadowed with a few days' worth of stubble. His eyes, she discovered when he finally looked at her, were a startling shade of blue-gray, like storm clouds over the prairie. "Good morning," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Can I help you find something? My father has received a new shipment of supplies if you are looking for anything in particular." Zachary straightened up, removing his hat in a gesture of politeness that surprised her. His dark brown hair was slightly longer than was fashionable, curling at the ends. "Morning, miss," he said, and his voice was deep and soft, with a slight drawl that suggested he had spent time further south. "I appreciate the offer, but I am just watching the street." "You watch the street every morning," Diana said, surprised by her own boldness. For 3 weeks now, something flickered in his eyes, might have been amusement or embarrassment, she could not tell which. "I suppose I do. Why?" He turned his hat in his hands, studying it as if it held answers. "I am waiting for someone, supposed to meet me here in Fort Worth, but he has not shown yet. 3 weeks is a long time to wait." "Yes, it is." He met her eyes again, and this time she was certain she saw the hint of a smile. "But I am a patient man, and the view from this porch is better than most." Diana felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the Texas sun. She was not accustomed to such attention, having spent most of her life focused on helping her father run the store after her mother had passed away from fever 5 years ago. The men in Fort Worth knew her as the Morrison girl, the one who kept the store clean and the inventory organized, not as someone to court or flirt with. "Well," she said, gathering her composure, "if you change your mind about needing anything, you are welcome to come inside." She turned to go back into the store, but his voice stopped her. "Miss, I did not catch your name." "Diana, Diana Morrison. Zachary Porter, he said, though she had already known his name from hearing it mentioned around town. It is a pleasure to properly meet you, Diana Morrison. The way he said her name made something flutter in her chest. She nodded and retreated back into the store, acutely aware of his gaze following her until the door closed behind her. Her father looked up from the counter, one eyebrow raised. Well, he is waiting for someone, a friend who is late. Thomas Morrison grunted, neither approving nor disapproving. Long as he is not causing trouble, I suppose there is no harm in it. But Diana, you be careful. We do not know anything about that young man. Yes, father, she said, picking up her broom again, but her thoughts were no longer on the floor that needed sweeping. The next morning, Zachary was there again, same spot, same time. Diana found herself taking extra care with her appearance, smoothing her simple blue dress and making sure her hair was properly pinned. She swept the floor with deliberate strokes, working her way toward the front of the store where she could see him through the window. He caught her looking and tipped his hat. The gesture was so natural, so easy that she found herself smiling despite her attempt to remain composed. She set down her broom and decided that if he was going to spend every morning on their porch, she might as well make conversation. Her father had gone to the bank to conduct some business, leaving her alone to mind the store. Outside, the air smelled of dust and horses and the distant promise of rain. Zachary straightened when she appeared, and this time she noticed a canteen hanging from his belt and a well-worn leather saddlebag at his feet. "Good morning, Zachary Porter," she said, leaning against the porch railing. "Good morning, Diana Morrison." There was definitely amusement in his voice now. "How is business today?" "Slow. Most folks do their shopping later in the week." She studied him for a moment, gathering courage. "This friend you are waiting for, is he usually this late?" Zachary's expression grew more serious. "Marcus is not usually late at all. We served together in the war, both just boys really, and afterward we worked various ranches together. He sent word 6 months ago about a job opportunity up in Kansas, asked me to meet him here so we could travel together. But I have been here 3 weeks and no sign of him. The war." Diana did quick math in her head. The conflict had ended 13 years ago. If Zachary had served, even as a young boy, that would make him around 23 or 24 now, a reasonable age given his appearance. "Have you asked around town? Maybe someone has seen him or knows something." "I have asked at the saloons, the hotel, even the sheriff's office. Nobody has seen a man matching Marcus's description." Zachary sighed, settling back against the post. "I am starting to think something might have happened to delay him, or worse." Diana felt sympathy well up inside her. "I am sorry. That must be very worrying." "It is what it is," he said, but she could hear the concern beneath his attempt at nonchalance. "Until I know for certain, I will keep waiting. Marcus would do the same for me." A customer approached from down the street, an older woman Diana recognized as Mrs. Patterson. She excused herself and went back inside to help with the transaction. But her mind remained on Zachary and his missing friend. The days fell into a pattern. Diana would sweep the store each morning, making sure every corner was tidy, every shelf was straight, and Zachary would take up his post on the porch. Sometimes they talked, brief conversations about the weather or happenings in town. Sometimes they simply existed in comfortable silence, her working inside, him watching outside. Her father grew less suspicious as time passed, and Zachary proved himself to be respectful and quiet. Thomas Morrison was practical above all else, and since the cowboy caused no trouble and actually seemed to discourage loiterers and troublemakers from congregating near the store, he saw no reason to send him away. On the 10th day of this routine, A full month after Zachary's first appearance, Diana brought him a cup of coffee. She had made a fresh pot for herself and her father, and the impulse to share seemed natural, neighborly even. Zachary accepted the cup with genuine surprise and gratitude. "You did not have to do this. I know," Diana said, "but you are out here every morning and it seemed unkind not to offer." He took a sip and closed his eyes, savoring it. "This is the best coffee I have had in months, maybe years. My mother's recipe. She always added just a pinch of cinnamon." Diana settled onto the top porch step, her skirts arranged carefully around her. She used to say coffee should be a comfort, not just a necessity. She sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. Diana looked out at the street, watching a wagon roll past, laden with lumber. "She died 5 years ago. Fever took her in less than a week. I am sorry." Zachary's voice was soft, sincere. "My mother passed when I was 12. Different circumstances, but I understand the loss." They sat in companionable silence for a while, and Diana realized this was the most personal conversation she had had with anyone outside her father in a very long time. The store kept her busy, and most of her interactions were purely transactional. This felt different. This felt like connection. "Can I ask you something?" Zachary said eventually. "Of course. Why do you sweep that floor so much? I see you going over the same spots multiple times." Diana felt her cheeks warm. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who spends a lot of time watching," he admitted. And there was something vulnerable in the confession. She considered lying, making up an excuse about her father's exacting standards, but something about Zachary's honest gaze made her want to be truthful. "At first I was just doing my work, but then I noticed you and I suppose I kept finding reasons to be near the front of the store, near the windows." His expression shifted, softening. "So I am not the only one who has been watching." "No," Diana said quietly, "you are not." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Diana's heart hammered in her chest. She had never been forward with a man before, had never even been courted properly. But something about Zachary made her want to be brave. Before either of them could speak again, her father's voice called from inside the store. "Diana, I need help with these inventory sheets." She stood quickly, smoothing her skirts. "I should go." "Diana." Zachary stood as well, setting his empty coffee cup carefully on the porch railing. "Would you like to take a walk with me this evening? After the store closes, I would like to talk more if you are willing." Her smile came naturally, easily. "I would like that very much." The afternoon passed with agonizing slowness. Diana tried to focus on her work, helping customers, restocking shelves, sweeping the floor again because she genuinely needed to and not just as an excuse. But her mind kept drifting to the evening ahead, to the prospect of walking with Zachary through Fort Worth as the sun set. Her father noticed her distraction. "You are thinking about that cowboy." It was not a question, but Diana answered anyway. "His name is Zachary, and yes, I am. He asked if I would walk with him this evening." Thomas Morrison set down the ledger he had been reviewing and looked at his daughter, really looked at her, perhaps seeing her as a woman instead of just his helper for the first time in a long while. "You are 19 years old," he said slowly, "old enough to make your own choices." "But Diana, we do not know much about him. He could be anyone." "He is a man waiting for his friend," Diana said. "A man who served in the war and works honest ranch jobs. A man who has been nothing but respectful and kind. A man who has been watching you for a month." "And I have been watching him." Diana moved to stand beside her father, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I am not foolish, father, I will be careful. But I am also lonely, and he seems lonely too, and I do not see the harm in a simple walk." Her father sighed, the sound heavy with all the years of raising a daughter alone, of trying to be both parents at once. Your mother would know better what to say. I just want you to be safe and happy. I know, Diana said softly, and I love you for it. When the store finally closed at 6 o'clock, Diana went upstairs to the small apartment where she and her father lived. She changed out of her work dress into her better Sunday dress, a soft green color that her mother had always said brought out her eyes. She brushed her hair until it shone and pinned it carefully, allowing a few curls to frame her face. When she came back down, her father looked her over and nodded. You look beautiful, just like your mother. Be back before full dark. I will. Zachary was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, hat in hand. He had clearly made an effort as well. His shirt looked freshly brushed and his face cleanly shaved. When he saw her, his expression transformed into something she could only describe as wonder. You look lovely, he said. Thank you. Diana felt suddenly shy but forced herself to meet his eyes. Where would you like to walk? Anywhere you like. I am still learning my way around Fort Worth properly. They set off down the main street, walking slowly, maintaining a respectable distance between them but close enough that Diana was constantly aware of his presence. The evening air was cooler, more comfortable than the day's heat, and the town was settling into its nighttime rhythm. Lamps were being lit in windows, and the sounds of laughter and music drifted from the saloons. Tell me about growing up here, Zachary said as they turned onto a quieter side street. There is not much to tell, Diana said. My father came here in 1871 when I was 12. He had some money saved and wanted to start his own business. Fort Worth was growing because of the cattle drives and the railroad, so it seemed like a good opportunity. We have been here ever since, building the store, becoming part of the community. You like it, running a store? Diana considered the question. No one had ever asked her that before. I do, mostly. I like helping people and I like the order of it, keeping everything organized and clean. But sometimes... She trailed off, unsure if she should continue. Sometimes what? Sometimes I wonder what else is out there. I have never left Fort Worth, never seen anything beyond these streets. I read books when I can, and I wonder about the places they describe. Mountains and oceans and big cities. She laughed self-consciously. That probably sounds foolish. Not at all, Zachary said firmly. I have had the chance to see a fair bit of the country, and I can tell you that curiosity is not foolish, it is human. What have you seen? His face grew distant, remembering. More than I wanted to during the war. Battlefields and burned towns and things no person should have to see. But after, when Marcus and I were working ranches, we traveled through Colorado and New Mexico territory, parts of Kansas. I have seen mountains so tall they scrape the sky and prairies so wide you feel like you might fall off the edge of the world. It sounds incredible. It can be. It can also be hard and lonely. He glanced at her. That is why I stayed in Fort Worth, waiting for Marcus. After all that traveling, I realized what I was really looking for was not places but people. Someone to share the journey with. Diana's breath caught at the implication in his words. They had reached a small park at the edge of town, where a few benches sat beneath cottonwood trees. She sat down and Zachary joined her, careful to maintain propriety. Can I be honest with you? Diana asked. Please. I started noticing you the very first day you appeared. I thought you were handsome, but more than that. There was something about the way you stood there, so patient and steady. Over these weeks, watching you wait for your friend, never giving up hope, it showed me what kind of man you are. And when we started talking, I found myself wanting to know more, wanting to hear your stories and share mine. Zachary turned to face her fully. I came to Fort Worth looking for Marcus, and I found you instead. These past weeks, watching you work, seeing how kind you are to customers, how dedicated you are to your father and the store, how you bring me coffee and talk to me even though I am just some cowboy taking up space on your porch. Diana, you have become the reason I look forward to each morning. What about your friend? What about the job in Kansas? I still hope Marcus shows up, and I still care about finding work. But Diana, I have been thinking. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to, and took her hand. His palm was calloused but warm, and Diana felt the contact all the way to her core. What if I stayed in Fort Worth? What if I found work here? Do you mean that? I do. If you want me to stay, if you think this us might be something worth exploring. Diana looked down at their joined hands, then back up at his earnest face. I have never felt this way about anyone before. It scares me a little how much I want you to stay. I am scared too, Zachary admitted, but I think the best things in life are worth being scared for. They sat there as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, talking about everything and nothing. Zachary told her about growing up on a small farm in East Texas, about losing his parents young and finding a surrogate family in the Army, terrible as that time was. Diana told him about her mother's death, about the weight of responsibility she felt toward her father and the store, about the dreams she had for a life bigger than what she had known. When full darkness finally fell, Zachary walked her back to the store, and at the foot of the stairs he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Thank you for this evening." "Will you be here tomorrow morning?" Diana asked, though she already knew the answer. "I will be here every morning, for as long as you want me to be." Diana went to sleep that night with a smile on her face and hope blooming in her chest. The next few weeks brought a shift in their relationship. Zachary continued his morning vigil, but now it felt less like watching and more like companionship. Diana would bring him coffee, sometimes a biscuit or a piece of fruit, and they would talk while she swept or organized goods near the front of the store. When she could take a break, she would sit with him on the porch, and they would watch Fort Worth go about its business. Her father softened toward Zachary as well, especially after the cowboy started helping with heavy lifting when deliveries came in, refusing payment but accepting dinner invitations. Thomas Morrison was a shrewd judge of character, and he began to see what his daughter saw, a good man with strong values and a kind heart. "You really care for him," Thomas said one evening after Zachary had left. "I do," Diana admitted. "Is that all right?" "Your mother would have liked him, I think. He works hard, he is respectful, and he makes you happy. That is enough for me." Her father paused. "But Diana, you know he might leave. If his friend shows up, if that job in Kansas is still available." "I know," Diana said quietly. "But he said he would stay if I wanted him to." "And what do you want?" It was a question Diana had been asking herself. "I want him to be happy. If staying here makes him happy, then I want him to stay. But I do not want him to resent me someday for holding him back." Those are wise thoughts. Hold on to them. On a cool October morning, nearly 2 months after Zachary first appeared, everything changed. Diana was sweeping the store, humming softly to herself, when she heard raised voices outside. She looked up to see Zachary standing rigid, facing a man she did not recognize. The stranger was tall and lean, with shaggy blonde hair and clothes that suggested hard travel. She set down her broom and moved closer to the door, her heart suddenly racing. Through the window, she could hear snippets of their conversation. "Marcus, is that really you?" Zachary's voice was filled with disbelief and relief. "In the flesh, brother. Sorry I am late." The stranger, Marcus, clapped Zachary on the shoulder. "Had some trouble in Oklahoma territory. Got held up by bandits, lost my horse, had to work odd jobs to earn enough to continue. By the time I got free, I was nearly 3 months behind schedule. Diana felt her stomach drop. Marcus was here. The friend Zachary had been waiting for all this time, the reason he had come to Fort Worth in the first place. "I was starting to think you were dead," Zachary said, and Diana could hear the emotion in his voice. "Takes more than a few bandits to kill me. But listen, we need to talk about the job. The offer is still good, but we need to get up to Kansas within the next 2 weeks, or they will give the positions to someone else. It is good money, Zach, better than anything we have had before." Zachary's response was too quiet for Diana to hear. She watched as he glanced back toward the store, toward where he knew she was likely standing. Even from a distance, she could see the conflict on his face. Marcus followed his gaze. "What is going on? You look like someone kicked your dog. It is complicated." "Well, uncomplicated. We have been planning this for months." Diana did not wait to hear more. She turned away from the door, her hands shaking as she gripped the broom handle. This was what she had feared, the moment when Zachary would have to choose between his plans and whatever was growing between them. She tried to focus on her work, sweeping with more vigor than necessary, but her mind was racing. She had no right to ask him to stay. They had known each other for only 2 months, but in that time, she had come to care for him more deeply than she had thought possible. The idea of him leaving felt like a physical wound. The door opened and Zachary stepped inside, his expression troubled. "Diana." "That is Marcus," she said, keeping her voice level. "Your friend." "Yes, he finally made it. I am glad he is safe." Diana meant it, even though his arrival complicated everything. "You must be relieved." "I am, but Diana, I need to talk to you about something." Zachary moved closer, lowering his voice so any potential customers would not overhear. "Marcus says the job is still available, but we need to leave soon, within a few days." "Then you should go," Diana said, forcing strength into her voice she did not feel. "This is what you have been waiting for." "It was what I was waiting for, before." He reached out and gently took the broom from her hands, setting it aside. "Diana, look at me." She did, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "I told you I would stay if you wanted me to. I meant it. I will go out there right now and tell Marcus I am not going, that I am making a life here in Fort Worth." "Zachary, you cannot ask me to make that decision." "I am not asking you to decide for me. I am telling you what I want to do, but I need to know if you want the same thing." "Do you want me to stay?" The question hung in the air between them. Diana's heart hammered in her chest. This was not how she had imagined this conversation going. She had thought she would have more time, that they would build their relationship slowly and carefully before having to make big decisions. "I care about you," she said slowly, choosing her words with care. "More than I have cared about anyone." "But Zachary, we have only known each other for 2 months. Is that enough to give up a good job? Is that enough to change all your plans? For the right person, 2 months can be enough to know." He took both her hands in his. "Diana, I am not a man who plays at feelings. When I commit to something, I commit fully. And I am committed to you, to us, to seeing where this can go. But I need to know if you feel the same way." Before Diana could answer, her father emerged from the back room. He took in the scene, Zachary holding his daughter's hands, both of them looking intense and worried, and cleared his throat. "Everything all right out here, Mr. Morrison? I apologize for the interruption," Zachary said, not letting go of Diana's hands. "But I need to speak with you as well. Your daughter has become very important to me, and I would like your permission to court her properly. I know this is sudden, but my circumstances have changed, and I need to make some decisions quickly." Thomas Morrison studied the young man for a long moment. "Diana, what do you want?" Diana looked at her father, then at Zachary, feeling the weight of the moment. "I want him to stay, but not if it means he will be unhappy or regret his choice. "Father, he has a good job opportunity in Kansas. He was supposed to go there with his friend." "And I am choosing to stay," Zachary said firmly. "Sir, I have spent years wandering, looking for something without really knowing what it was. Then I met your daughter, and I realized what I had been searching for was not a place or a job but a home, someone to build a life with. If you give me your blessing, I would like the chance to prove I can be that person for Diana." The store was silent except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. Finally, Thomas Morrison spoke. "Young man, I appreciate your honesty and your respect in asking my permission. But I will not make this decision for my daughter. Diana, the choice is yours." Diana felt tears prick at her eyes, overwhelmed by the weight of the moment and the depth of feeling swelling in her chest. "What about Marcus? What about your friendship? Marcus will understand. And if he does not, then he was not the friend I thought he was." Zachary squeezed her hands gently. "Diana, please, tell me what you want." She thought about the past 2 months, about morning coffee and evening walks, about conversations that stretched for hours and comfortable silences that felt like peace. She thought about the way her heart had learned to anticipate his presence, how the store felt emptier on the rare occasions when he arrived late. She thought about the future, about the possibility of building something real and lasting with this man who had come into her life so unexpectedly. "I want you to stay," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I want you to stay, and I want to see where this goes, but Zachary, you have to be sure. I could not bear it if you stayed and then regretted it." "I am sure," he said without hesitation. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." He pulled her into his arms, and Diana went willingly, not caring that her father was watching or that they were in the middle of the store. She felt Zachary's heart beating against hers, strong and steady, and she knew this was right. Her father cleared his throat again, but this time there was warmth in the sound. "I suppose I will give you two some privacy. But Zachary, if you are staying in Fort Worth, you will need a job. I could use help at the store, especially with the heavy work. The pay is not much, but it comes with room and board." Zachary pulled back from Diana, hope lighting his features. "Sir, I would be honored to work for you." "Good, you can start tomorrow." Thomas Morrison headed toward the back room, then paused. "And Zachary, welcome to the family." After her father left, Diana and Zachary stood together in the quiet store, processing what had just happened. Outside, they could hear Marcus calling for Zachary, his voice carrying a note of impatience. "You should talk to him," Diana said. "Explain things properly. Come with me." She nodded, and together they walked outside. Marcus was pacing on the porch, his expression shifting to confusion when he saw Diana. "Marcus, this is Diana Morrison. She is the reason I am staying in Fort Worth." Zachary's voice was calm but firm. "Diana, this is Marcus Trent, my best friend since I was 16 years old." Marcus looked between them, understanding dawning. "Oh, well, that explains the complicated situation you mentioned." He studied Diana for a moment, then broke into a grin. "Miss Morrison, you must be something special to make this stubborn fool change his plans." "I hope so," Diana said, liking him immediately despite the complications his arrival had caused. "Marcus, I am sorry," Zachary said. "I know we have been planning this for a long time. But things have changed for me. Fort Worth has become home." Marcus sighed, but it was not an angry sound. "I cannot say I am not disappointed. Was looking forward to working together again. But Zach, I saw the way you looked at her. If this lady makes you happy, then I understand. I might even be a little jealous." He extended his hand to Zachary. "No hard feelings, brother. You have to follow your heart." They shook hands, then pulled each other into a brief embrace, the kind of hug that spoke of years of friendship and shared hardship. Diana felt relief wash over her. She had hated the thought of coming between Zachary and his friend. "What will you do?" Zachary asked. "Head up to Kansas like planned. Maybe the job can still work for one instead of two. If not, I will find something else. I always do." Marcus grinned. "But I expect an invitation to the wedding when it happens." Diana felt her cheeks flush, but she did not protest the assumption. Neither did Zachary. "You will be the first person we tell," Zachary promised. Marcus stayed in Fort Worth for 2 more days, staying at the hotel and spending time catching up with Zachary. Diana got to know him better during those days, and she understood why Zachary valued his friendship. Marcus was loyal and funny, with a good heart beneath his rough exterior. He told her stories about the years he and Zachary had spent working together, painting a picture of the man she was coming to love through experiences she had not shared. When Marcus finally left, heading north toward Kansas, Diana stood with Zachary on the porch of the general store and watched him ride away. "You have any regrets?" she asked quietly. "None," Zachary said, wrapping his arm around her waist. "My future is here." The weeks that followed brought new routines and deepening connection. Zachary moved into a small room above the store, not far from where Diana and her father lived. He proved to be a hard worker, taking on the physical tasks that her aging father found increasingly difficult. He also had a natural way with customers, friendly and patient, and business actually seemed to improve with his presence. Diana found herself falling more in love with him every day. She loved the way he hummed while working, the way he always made sure she had the first cup of coffee from each fresh pot, the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. They spent their evenings walking through Fort Worth, talking about everything from philosophy to practical matters like how to organize the store's new inventory. 3 months after Marcus left, on a cold December evening, Zachary asked Diana to take a walk with him after the store closed. She bundled into her warmest coat, sensing something important was coming. He led her to the small park where they had first really talked, where the cottonwood trees now stood bare against the winter sky. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the frozen grass. "I have been thinking about the future," Zachary said, taking both her hands in his. "About what I want my life to look like. And what do you see?" "I see you. I see us. I see a life built together, here in Fort Worth. Maybe taking over the store someday when your father is ready to retire. Maybe starting a family." He pulled out a small velvet box from his coat pocket. "Diana Morrison, I know we have not been together very long by some standards, but I know my heart. I love you. I love your kindness and your strength. I love the way you care for your father and how you sweep that floor, even when it is already clean because you like things to be perfect. I love everything about you, and I cannot imagine my future without you in it. Will you marry me?" Diana felt tears spill down her cheeks, warm against the cold air. "Yes, yes, Zachary, I will marry you." The ring he slipped onto her finger was simple, a slim gold band with a small diamond, but to Diana it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Zachary pulled her close and kissed her for the first time, and Diana felt like everything in her life had been leading to this moment. They were married in February of 1879, in a small ceremony at the Fort Worth courthouse with her father as witness. Diana wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved all these years, and Zachary wore a new suit purchased specially for the occasion. It was not a grand affair, but it was perfect in its simplicity. Marcus could not make it back for the wedding, but he sent a telegram of congratulations and a beautiful set of silver candlesticks as a gift. Diana placed them on the mantel of the home she and Zachary made in the rooms above the store, a symbol of the friendship that had inadvertently brought them together. Marriage suited them both. Zachary proved to be a devoted husband, attentive and loving. He took on more responsibilities at the store as Thomas Morrison's health began to decline slowly with age. Diana discovered she enjoyed being a wife, creating a home for Zachary, cooking meals they shared together, lying beside him at night and talking until they fell asleep. The store continued to thrive. Fort Worth was growing rapidly, and Morrison's General Store became a cornerstone of the community. Zachary's ideas for expansion, adding new product lines and improving the layout, proved successful. He had a good head for business, and her father came to rely on him more and more. One morning in late spring, Diana woke feeling ill. At first, she thought it was something she had eaten, but when the sickness continued for several days, only in the mornings, she began to suspect something else. A visit to the doctor confirmed what she had hoped. She was expecting a child. She told Zachary that evening in their small sitting room above the store. She had planned something elaborate, but in the end, she simply blurted it out. "I am pregnant." Zachary stared at her for a long moment, as if not quite processing the words. Then his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around despite her laughing protests to be careful. "We are going to have a baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "Diana, we are going to be parents. Are you happy?" she asked, though his reaction made the answer obvious. Happy does not even begin to cover it. I am thrilled. I am terrified. I am every emotion at once. He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. I am your father, and I already love you so much." Diana felt tears of joy on her cheeks. This was more than she had ever dreamed possible: a loving husband, a home, and now a child on the way. Her father was equally delighted by the news. "I am going to be a grandfather," he said, his eyes misty. "Your mother would have been so happy, Diana." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. As summer turned to fall, Diana's belly grew round, and Zachary became increasingly protective. He would not let her lift anything heavy, insisted she rest frequently, and worried constantly about her health. She found his concern endearing, even when it bordered on excessive. "I am pregnant, not ill," she told him one afternoon when he tried to take a broom from her hands. "I can still sweep the floor." "But should you?" he argued. "What if it is too much strain?" Zachary Porter, "Women have been sweeping floors while pregnant since the beginning of time. I will be fine." But she kissed him to soften her words, grateful for his care even as she insisted on maintaining some normalcy. In November of 1879, Diana went into labor. It was a long, difficult process that lasted through the night and into the next day. Zachary paced outside the bedroom door, driven nearly mad with worry by Diana's cries of pain. Her father sat with him, offering words of comfort and sharing stories of Diana's birth, how her mother had been just as strong and brave. Finally, as the sun reached its peak in the sky, a baby's cry rang out. The midwife emerged with a smile. "You have a healthy son, Mr. Porter. And your wife is doing well." Zachary nearly collapsed with relief. A son. He had a son. The midwife led him into the room, and he found Diana propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. "Come meet your boy," she said softly. Zachary approached slowly, almost afraid this moment was too perfect to be real. He looked down at the baby in Diana's arms, at the tiny face with closed eyes and impossibly small features, and felt his heart expand with a love so fierce it almost hurt. "He is perfect," Zachary whispered. "We should name him," Diana said. "What do you think of Daniel?" "Daniel Thomas Porter, after my father." Zachary looked at Thomas Morrison, who stood in the doorway with tears streaming down his weathered face. "I think that is a fine name." Baby Daniel was healthy and strong, with a good set of lungs that he exercised frequently. Diana and Zachary settled into the exhausting but rewarding routine of new parenthood. Zachary proved to be a natural father, patient and loving, happy to walk the floor with Daniel at night when the baby was fussy, changing diapers without complaint, and staring at his son with endless fascination. The store continued to operate, though Diana took time away from the daily work to focus on the baby. Zachary hired a young woman from town to help with the daily tasks, freeing him to manage the business side while still being present for his family. Thomas Morrison was a devoted grandfather, spending hours with baby Daniel, telling him stories and singing old songs. Diana watched her father with her son and felt a deep sense of contentment. This was family, this was love, this was everything that mattered. Daniel grew into a curious, active toddler who loved exploring the store. By the time he was 2 years old, he was trying to help his parents and grandfather with simple tasks, his enthusiasm far exceeding his actual ability to contribute. Diana found herself pregnant again, and in the spring of 1882 they welcomed a daughter into the world. They named her Grace Margaret Porter, and she was completely different from her brother. Where Daniel had been fussy and demanding, Grace was calm and content. Zachary called her his little angel, and Diana marveled at how different two children from the same parents could be. The years passed in a blur of happiness and growth. The store prospered under Zachary's management, expanding to take over the adjacent building. They hired more help, and what had started as a simple general store became one of the most successful businesses in Fort Worth. Thomas Morrison lived long enough to see both his grandchildren grow into bright, lively children. He passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1884 at the age of 67. Diana grieved deeply, but she found comfort in knowing her father had died happy, surrounded by family, and having built something lasting. After her father's death, Diana and Zachary officially took over full ownership of the store. They renamed it Morrison and Porter General Store, honoring both of their contributions. The business continued to thrive, and they became pillars of the Fort Worth community. Marcus came to visit in the summer of 1885. He had found success in Kansas, working as a foreman on a large ranch, but he had never married or settled down. "I guess I am still looking for what you found," he told Zachary one evening as they sat on the porch of the now much larger store. "It is never too late," Zachary said. "I thought I knew what I wanted when I came to Fort Worth that first time. Turns out I had no idea. No regrets, not a single one." Zachary watched through the window as Diana played with Daniel and Grace inside. "Every choice I made led me here, to this family, to this life. I would not change anything." Marcus stayed for a week, delighting Daniel and Grace with stories and tricks, and when he left, he seemed more at peace. He promised to visit again, and over the years he kept that promise, becoming Uncle Marcus to the Porter children. In 1887, Diana gave birth to another son whom they named Samuel. And 2 years later, another daughter, Rose. The Porter family grew, filling the expanded living space above the store with noise and laughter and love. Diana sometimes thought back to that first morning when she had noticed the tall cowboy on her porch, watching but never buying anything. She remembered being curious and a little nervous, wondering what this stranger wanted. She never could have imagined then where that curiosity would lead. Zachary still helped around the store, though he had managers and employees to handle most of the daily work now. But sometimes Diana would see him standing on that same spot where he used to watch for Marcus, and she would grab a broom, even though they had people to sweep the floors, and she would work nearby, just as she had done all those years ago. "What are you thinking about?" she asked him one morning, setting aside her broom to stand beside him. "I am thinking about how grateful I am," Zachary said, wrapping his arm around her waist. How a terrible situation, Marcus being delayed, turned into the best thing that ever happened to me. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if he had been on time, if you had never waited here, sometimes? But then I remember that I believe in fate. I think somehow, some way we would have found each other. We were meant to be together. Diana leaned into him, watching Fort Worth go about its morning business. The town had grown so much since she was a girl. There were more buildings, more people, more progress, but some things remained constant. The store still stood strong. Their love still grew deeper with each passing year. Daniel was 12 now, already showing signs of the man he would become. He loved the store and had a good head for business like his father. Grace at 10 was creative and dreamy, always drawing or making up stories. Samuel at 5 was all energy and mischief, keeping everyone on their toes. And little Rose at 3 was the baby of the family, spoiled by her older siblings but somehow not ruined by it. "We have built a good life," Diana said. "We have built a beautiful life," Zachary corrected. "And it keeps getting better." That evening, after the children were in bed, Diana and Zachary sat together on the porch, watching the stars come out over Fort Worth. It had become their habit over the years, this quiet time together after the bustle of the day. "Do you remember our first walk?" Diana asked. "When you told me you had been looking for people, not places. I remember everything about that night. You said you wanted someone to share the journey with. Do you feel like you found that?" Zachary took her hand, the same way he had done so many times over the years. His hands were still strong, still calloused from work, but now they bore a wedding ring that had become as much a part of him as his own skin. "Diana, from the moment you brought me that first cup of coffee, you became my journey. Every day with you is an adventure. Every moment with our children is a gift. I spent years searching before I came to Fort Worth, and I did not even know what I was looking for. But it was you. It was always you." Diana felt tears prick her eyes, happy tears. After 10 years of marriage, he could still make her feel like that young woman who had been too shy to admit she was sweeping the floor just to be near him. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too. Today, tomorrow, and every day after that." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hand in hand, watching the world settle into night. Diana thought about her mother, gone so many years now, and she hoped somehow her mother could see this, could know that her daughter had found happiness. She thought about her father, who had welcomed Zachary into their family without hesitation, who had lived long enough to see his grandchildren, and know his legacy would continue. Inside the house, she could hear the children stirring. Samuel had probably woken Rose, and now Grace would have to settle them both back down. Diana started to rise, ready to help, but Zachary gently stopped her. "Let Grace handle it. She is growing up and she is good with her younger siblings. Stay here with me for a few more minutes." Diana settled back down. He was right. Their children were growing up, becoming capable and independent. Soon enough, Daniel would be a man, ready to take on real responsibility in the business. Grace would be a young woman with her own dreams and plans. Time moved so fast. "Do you think we will have more children?" Zachary asked. Diana laughed softly. "4 is quite enough, don't you think? We are not getting any younger." "I suppose you are right. Though I would not mind. I love our family, so do I, but Zachary, I am 38 years old. 4 children is a blessing. Let's be content with what we have." "I am content," he assured her. "I just want you to know that I would welcome whatever the future brings as long as I am facing it with you." Inside, the house had gone quiet again. Grace had worked her magic, as she always did. Diana rested her head on Zachary's shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of him, soap and leather and something uniquely his own. "Tell me about tomorrow," she said, a game they sometimes played. Tomorrow the sun will rise over Fort Worth. I will wake up next to you. We will have breakfast with our children, all of them talking at once and making enough noise to wake the entire town. Then we will go downstairs to the store, and we will work together like we always do. I will probably find some excuse to stand in that spot where I used to watch for Marcus, and you will probably grab a broom even though we have people to sweep the floors, and we will steal glances at each other like we still have a secret, even though everyone in town knows how much we love each other. Diana smiled. That sounds perfect. It does, doesn't it? They stayed on the porch until the night grew cold, finally retreating inside to their warm home, their sleeping children, their life together. As Diana prepared for bed, brushing out her hair while Zachary changed into his night clothes, she caught his eye in the mirror. "Thank you," she said. "For what? For being late. For Marcus being delayed. For you standing on our porch all those mornings, watching and waiting. For staying when you could have gone. For choosing me." Zachary moved behind her, placing his hands on her shoulders, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "I told you before, Diana, I believe in fate. You were always going to be my destination. The only real choice I made was to recognize it when I found it." That night, lying in their bed with Zachary's arms around her, Diana felt complete. She had started as a girl sweeping her father's store, watching a mysterious cowboy and wondering about him. She had grown into a woman running a successful business, married to that same cowboy who had turned out to be so much more than she could have imagined. She was a mother to 4 beautiful children, a pillar of the Fort Worth community, and most importantly, she was loved. The years continued to roll by, bringing changes and challenges, but always maintaining that core of love and partnership that Diana and Zachary had built. In 1891, when Daniel was 15, he started taking on more serious responsibilities at the store, learning bookkeeping and inventory management from his father. Grace discovered a talent for arranging displays and dealing with customers, her natural charm making her an asset to the business. Marcus visited less frequently as the years went on, his ranch work demanding more of his time, but he always remembered birthdays and Christmas, sending gifts and letters. He had become like family, a beloved uncle who represented the twist of fate that had brought Diana and Zachary together. In 1895, a young man came to Fort Worth looking for work. His name was James Whitmore, and he was 20 years old, hardworking and earnest. He started helping at the store, and it did not take long for Diana to notice the way he looked at Grace, who was now 18 and even more beautiful than her mother had been at that age. Diana watched with knowing eyes as Grace and James grew closer. She saw her own story reflected in theirs, the shy glances, the excuses to be near each other, the slow blooming of love. When James asked permission to court Grace, Diana and Zachary gave it gladly, seeing in the young man the same qualities that had made Zachary a good husband and father. Grace married James in 1896, and they settled in Fort Worth, James becoming a partner in the store. Diana became a grandmother in 1897, when Grace gave birth to a daughter. Holding her granddaughter for the first time, Diana felt the beautiful cycle of life continuing, felt the love she had known multiplying and spreading to new generations. Daniel married a few years later, choosing a smart, capable woman named Rebecca who fit perfectly into the Porter family. Samuel grew into a strong young man who decided to try ranching instead of store work, taking a job outside of Fort Worth but visiting often. Little Rose, who was not so little anymore, surprised everyone by showing an interest in teaching, eventually becoming a schoolteacher in Fort Worth. Through it all, Diana and Zachary remained the center of their growing family. They were the grandparents now, the wise elders who had built something lasting. They still worked at the store, though they had largely turned over day-to-day operations to Daniel and James. They still took evening walks when the weather was nice. They still stole moments on the porch, remembering how it all began. On a warm September morning in 1903, 25 years after Zachary first appeared on the porch of Morrison's general store, Diana woke early. She was 60 now, her dark hair now threaded with silver, her face lined with years of laughter and love. She looked over at Zachary, still sleeping peacefully beside her. He was 68, his hair completely gray now but still handsome in her eyes. She slipped out of bed quietly, not wanting to wake him, and went downstairs to the store. It was early enough that no one else had arrived yet. The store was quiet, peaceful, filled with memories. She found a broom, the same type she had used all those years ago, and began to sweep. The motion was meditative, familiar. She swept the same floorboards that she had swept as a young woman, watching a mysterious cowboy and wondering about him. She swept the paths that thousands of customers had walked, the places where her children had played and learned and grown. She swept the foundation of the life she and Zachary had built together. Some things never change. Zachary's voice came from behind her, warm with affection. Diana turned to see her husband standing in the doorway, watching her with the same expression he had worn all those years ago. "Old habits," she said with a smile. "Good habits." He moved to join her, taking the broom gently from her hands and setting it aside. "Diana Morrison, Porter, you are still the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." "Now I know you need spectacles," she teased. "My eyes work just fine. And what they see is the woman I fell in love with, just a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and somehow even more precious to me." Diana wrapped her arms around him, and they stood there in the quiet store, holding each other the way they had done countless times over the past 25 years. Through the window, the sun was rising over Fort Worth, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. "Do you ever wish things had been different?" Diana asked. "That you had taken that job in Kansas, seen more of the country, had different adventures?" "Never," Zachary said firmly. "This is my adventure. You are my adventure, our family, our store, our life together. I would not trade one single day of it for all the Kansas jobs in the world. Even the hard days, when the children were sick or money was tight or we argued over something foolish, especially those days, because we faced them together and we came through stronger. Diana, you are my partner in every sense of the word. Everything good in my life started the day I decided to wait on this porch." They pulled apart as they heard sounds of the town waking up, of their employees arriving to start the day, of their family beginning to stir in the rooms above. But they shared one more kiss, tender and sweet, a promise that had been kept for 25 years and would continue to be kept for whatever time they had left. The day unfolded like so many others, filled with customers and conversation, with family dropping by, with the comfortable rhythm of work shared between two people who knew each other completely. Grace brought the grandchildren by after school, and the store filled with childish laughter. Daniel consulted with Zachary about a business decision. Rose stopped by on her lunch break to share news about her students. As evening fell and the store closed, as their family departed and quiet descended once more, Diana and Zachary retreated to their porch. It had become their spot, their place to reflect and remember. They sat side by side, hand in hand, watching Fort Worth settle into night. "We built something good," Diana said softly. "We did," Zachary agreed. "And it will continue after us. Daniel and Grace will keep the store going. Our grandchildren will grow up knowing the value of hard work and family. The love we have shared will echo through generations." Diana thought about that first morning, about a shy girl with a broom and a mysterious cowboy who watched but never bought anything. She thought about coffee shared, walks taken, promises made. She thought about a wedding, about babies born, about a life constructed from moments of love and choice. "I am glad you stayed," she whispered. "I am glad you wanted me to," Zachary whispered back. They sat there as the stars emerged, as Fort Worth quieted around them, as the life they had built together continued its steady, beautiful rhythm. There would be more tomorrows, more sunrises, more moments of joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge. But they would face them as they had faced everything for 25 years together. In the years that followed, Diana and Zachary gradually stepped further back from the daily operations of the store, content to let their children and their spouses take over completely. They spent more time with their grandchildren, passing on stories and wisdom. They took trips, short journeys to see parts of Texas they had never visited, making new memories while honoring old ones. Marcus came to visit one final time in 1907, his health failing but his spirit still strong. He spent a week with the Porter family, regaling the grandchildren with stories of his and Zachary's younger days, carefully edited for young ears. Before he left, he pulled Zachary aside. "Brother, I need to tell you something," Marcus said, his voice rough with age and illness. "All those years ago, when I was late getting to Fort Worth, part of me wondered if you would resent me for it when I finally showed up. But watching you with Diana, with your family, seeing what you have built, I know now that my delay was a gift. Not for me, but for you. You found what you were really looking for. You helped me find it," Zachary said, embracing his old friend. "By being late, you gave me time to discover Diana, and by supporting my choice to stay, you showed me what real friendship means." Marcus died 6 months later, peacefully in his sleep on the ranch in Kansas. Zachary grieved the loss of his oldest friend, but he took comfort in knowing Marcus had lived a good life and had been loved. At Marcus's request, his ashes were brought to Fort Worth and scattered in the small park where Diana and Zachary had first really talked, where Zachary had proposed, where so much of their love story had unfolded. "He is part of our story," Diana said as they stood in the park afterward. "He always will be. The best stories involve more than just two people," Zachary reflected. "They involve all the people who touch our lives, who influence our choices, who become part of our journey." Diana squeezed his hand in agreement. The years moved on as years do. Diana and Zachary grew older together, their bodies slowing but their love remaining constant. They celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary in 1919, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The celebration was held in the store that had brought them together, now one of the oldest continuously operating businesses in Fort Worth. Daniel gave a speech, talking about his parents' legacy not just in business but in love, in family, in community. "They taught us that success is not measured in dollars but in relationships," he said. "That the truest wealth is found in the people we love and who love us in return." Diana cried happy tears as she listened, as she looked around at the family she and Zachary had created. This was their legacy, not the store or the money or the reputation, but these people, these connections, this love that would continue long after she and Zachary were gone. Zachary died peacefully in his sleep in the winter of 1922, at the age of 87. Diana held his hand as he slipped away, whispering words of love and gratitude, reminding him of their first meeting, their first walk, the life they had shared. Her grief was profound, but it was softened by the knowledge that they had had more than 40 years together, years filled with love and laughter and family. She continued for 3 more years without him, supported by her children and grandchildren, still occasionally sweeping the floors of the store that had been the setting for the greatest romance of her life. She told stories about Zachary to anyone who would listen, keeping his memory alive, making sure the younger generations understood what kind of man he had been. Diana passed away quietly in her sleep in the spring of 1925, at the age of 81. Her family knew she had died happy, reunited in whatever came after with the man who had stood on a porch and watched, who had stayed when he could have gone, who had chosen love over plans. The store remained in the Porter family for generations, a testament to what Diana and Zachary had built. And sometimes, on quiet mornings when the light hit just right, employees swore they could see the ghost of a young woman sweeping the floor, and the shadow of a tall cowboy watching her with love in his eyes, their spirits forever intertwined in the place where their story began. The tale of Diana Morrison and Zachary Porter became local legend in Fort Worth, a romance that proved love could be found in the most unexpected places, that patience could be rewarded, that sometimes the best destination was not the one originally planned. Parents told their children about the girl who swept and the cowboy who watched, about how a simple choice to stay changed everything, about how true love could build a legacy that lasted long after the lovers themselves were gone. And the store still stands, generation after generation of Porters maintaining it, honoring the memory of the couple who started it all. On the porch, there is a plaque that reads, "Here is where Zachary Porter waited, where Diana Morrison swept, and where a love story for the ages began. May all who enter find the same devotion and joy that founded this place." Their story, simple and profound, continued to inspire, a reminder that the greatest adventures are not always found in distant places or grand schemes, but sometimes in the quiet moments of connection, in the choice to stay, in the courage to love. Diana and Zachary had found what so many search for their entire lives: a partner, a purpose, a home. And they had found it all on a porch in Fort Worth, Texas, where a mysterious cowboy had once watched and waited, and a young woman with a broom had dared to ask why.